devs, I hope you're doing great. So since the last update, I have been working on a push kick mechanic as an implementation attempt for wall jumping. And I got it working pretty quickly, and you just saw the results in the intro. After playing around with it a bit, I extended it to be also an attack with which you can push back enemies and deal damage to them as well. I added the hearing sense to the AI, and for this the gun has to emit a noise event, and the AI needs a way of processing it as well. Next, I wanted to create a better test level, which would be more representative of what I have in mind for the game to be. And here I quickly discovered that the above mentioned push mechanic does not work very well for movement. So I deactivated it, but I left in the part for pushing back enemies, and it works quite nice. I discovered that when rotating the player fast, the gun and hands start to leave smears on the screen. As you can see, there is a smear to the left of the gun. But it does not end there, so whenever the arms in the gun are on top of the wall, there are some artifacts as well. And there is some sort of area where the motion blur is not being applied or something. I'm not entirely sure what I'm looking at exactly, but I know that I don't want it. And yeah, one could argue also that it is because of the wall texture and it being high frequency in terms of contrast changes and such, but I refuse to accept this quality wise. So I went on an adventure to find out what this is all about, and boy did I not expect what I'm about to show you next.
So my problem is this: when I enable motion blur in this engine, I get really ugly and harsh edges on my G36C model. It happens whenever I move or rotate my player. I tried it with all the anti-aliasing modes with no effect. Possible solutions? Is it possible to disable motion blur with my first-person model only? That would solve it once and for all. Or is it possible to soften the edges of the motion blur effect? However, I still would want to disable motion blur from my weapon only. I'm really disappointed with Unreal Engine 4 if it is not possible.
You're doing something wrong. It's not the engine. Here's done correctly.
Telling me I am doing something wrong, but not telling me exactly what it is I am doing wrong is really useless. And what is this video supposed to do? Help me? In what way exactly? You're just showing gameplay of a random game.
That's probably how it is, but that is how it works default, and I can't find any settings to disable motion blur for gun only, and can't figure out how to do it with blueprints.
I never understand designers using motion blur for human movement as a gamer. You don't see blurry when you are walking.
And this does not help either. I mean, nobody asked you for your opinion as a gamer, what you think about motion blur, and also the notion that there shouldn't be any is also wrong. I mean, computer graphics are modeled after camera, cinematography and photography, and not after your eyes. So you also don't see bloom with your eyes, neither can you set a different field of view in your eyes as well. So I don't understand this argument at all.
Yeah, but it looks good.
Double check your scalability settings to make sure they are set to epic. You can find them from the settings button on the main toolbar.
But this one really takes the cake. I mean, this is a moderator and they say the equivalent of have you tried turning it off and on again. And what's next? Is someone gonna suggest that the person needs to update their graphics drivers in order to make this work?
Check. Everything is as high as possible.
And maybe I'm getting upset for no reason at all, but this is how 90% of threads in this forum ends. Unanswered questions and a bunch of opinions nobody asked for. And this is it. This is the end of the thread, and nothing got answered, and I'm just more confused than ever. But fortunately, I found a different forum post, and someone asked for the correct values for motion blur, and here again, as the first response, someone is telling them that it is an art preference, which thankfully the next person says that it's not an art preference and that there are some technical details one should be aware of. And this post actually helped me in figuring out the values I need to tweak. And these are the settings I'm using right now for the motion blur, so if you want to copy them, feel free to do so. And as of lately, I have been thinking about how to do version control for my project. And to give you a bit of context, I'm using Git as my version control system, and my repository is hosted on GitLab. And GitLab gives you 10 gigabytes and it does not have a limit on file size. I'm quite happy with it, but I was thinking what happens when the project reaches this limit. You cannot upgrade to a bigger package, unfortunately, and I haven't found a provider which offers something like that. And I don't want to switch from Git because it is my daily driver at work as well, so I have cooked up something on my own. So let me illustrate my current system. I have a repository on an external hard drive and I have modified the git config, so whenever I push to GitLab, it automatically pushes to my hard drive as well. So this way I always have a backup in case of something goes wrong. And if I do reach the limit on GitLab, I can just continue working with using my hard drive as my main Git repository. And you might say that this seems kinda unsecure because hard drives can fail as well, and yeah, you're right. And this is why I'm also synchronizing the repository to the cloud. So whenever I push a commit, it gets pushed to GitLab and to my external hard drive, which in turn triggers a synchronization to Google Drive. So I have two redundant backups, one locally and one in the cloud. And please do keep in mind that this works for me and that it fits me and my workflow as a solo developer. And this is important for you to understand that I'm using G Drive as a backup and not as a Git server. But if you also are a solo developer, I would highly encourage you to think about your project and how to back it up safely. And most likely I will make a video on how to set this up properly, so that you don't make the same mistakes I made when I first tried to set this up. Yeah, and that's it for this episode, and I see you in the next one. Bye.